the endocrine system and mostly hormones. We're looking at the endocrine system here, the human endocrine system. These are all the glands that are involved with releasing hormones. And why are hormones needed? These guys are chemical messengers from one body part to another. Communication is needed to coordinate the whole body to keep the body in homeostasis, right, and regulation. So some things that are needed, so solute levels in blood, glucose, calcium, salts, our metabolism, our growth, our development, our maturation, and our reproduction. We're taking a look at growth hormones here. Okay. So animals can rely on two systems for regulation. We have the endocrine system and the nervous system. Nervous system we learn about at the end of the year, so we're going to talk about the endocrine now. The endocrine system is a system of ductless glands. They secrete chemical signals directly into the blood. The chemical travels to the target tissue. Target cells have receptor proteins, and there's a slow, long-lasting response. The nervous system is a system of neurons. This is what we're looking at here. It transmits electrical signals and releases neurotransmitters. It's fast, and short-lasting responses. Okay. Taking a look here, neurotransmitters are released by neurons, and hormones are what are released by our endocrine glands. So we're not going to talk about the nervous system too much today. We are going to get into it later at the end of the year. So hormones are what are released by endocrine glands, right? And these hormones, you can see, have receptor proteins, which is why cell signaling is so important. Okay. All right. So there's different classes of hormones. We have protein-based hormones. Okay. They're polypeptides, another word for protein. They're small proteins. An example is insulin and ADH, antidiuretic hormones. Those are protein hormones that are proteins. Glycoproteins are large proteins with carbohydrates. So you're going to be doing a little research on this. You have FSH and LH. Are examples of hormones that are glycoproteins. Okay, amines. These are modified amino acids, so epinephrine and melatonin are examples of amine proteins, right? So we also have lipid-based hormones. Steroids, such as cholesterol, modified cholesterol, our sex hormones, and our aldosterone are all lipid-based hormones. Okay. So lipid-based hormones, since they're hydrophobic and lipid-soluble, they'll go right through the cell membrane and enter the cells. They bind to a receptor proteins in the cytoplasm and in the nucleus. So we're going to take a look at pictures of this so we can really connect our cell signaling and our cell membrane unit that we've been talking about to this, right? They'll bind to DNA as what we call a transcription factor. Okay. They turn on genes. So that's the importance of our lipid-based hormones. Now, on the contrary, protein-based hormones, these are usually hydrophilic and they're not lipid-soluble, which means they cannot diffuse across the cell membrane. They bind to receptor proteins in the cell membrane. Okay, so if you were doing your cancer project and you see that your protein, your pathway depends on something binding outside of a cell, it's because there was a protein-based hormone, it can't get into the cell. Okay, it triggers a secondary messenger pathway. So reception, transduction, the transduction, secondary messenger pathway, and then there'll be an internal cellular response. So it will bind on the cell membrane, will trigger the cytoplasmic transduction, and then a response inside of the cell. Okay. So enzyme action, uptake, or secretion of molecules. So let's take a look at the action of steroid hormones, right? So here's our blood. Okay, this is our steroid hormone. It's got a protein carrier. Notice it's a protein carrier. Then it's target cells here. Okay, so we're taking a look at our cell membrane. So what I want you to notice is that we have the steroid hormone can just diffuse right through the membrane because it's a lipid. Okay, it binds, and we have some action occurring inside of the cell. The protein binds to the protein, goes into the nucleus, is a transcription factor, which means it's going to turn on a gene. Okay, so the difference between lipid and peptides, we're going to look at peptides in a minute, is we have this happening inside of the cell. That reception happens inside of the cell. Okay, here we go. All right. Oh, I missed this part. So after it becomes a transcription factor, we have DNA, our mRNA goes out to here. We have the mRNA red ribosome, and our protein is made. Okay, so that's the whole thing. Okay, the protein is secreted out. So growth factors, hair, bone, muscle, and gametes, those need growth factors to grow, especially your bones when you were young. But your hair uses growth factors, your hair grows, and then your muscles. So here's the action of protein hormones. We're taking a look at the target cell, the membrane, the cytoplasm, the receptor protein. So you have the protein hormone binding, okay? That's our signal. It binds to the receptor protein and activates the cytoplasmic signal. There's our transduction, okay? All of this is our transduction we're going to see here. Acts as a second messenger, activates an enzyme, activates an enzyme, and 2 is going to say it's our transduction, okay? And then it produces an action of some sort. So very different between those two. Here we're doing a little research on them, okay? So here's an example of an action of epinephrine, which is adrenaline, okay, produced in our adrenal glands, which sit on top of our kidney. This is a cytoplasm of the liver cell. It's a receptor protein on the cell membrane. That's epinephrine binding. Okay, there's our signal. It activates a GTP. Okay, which then phosphorylates, like we've talked about in our signal transduction. Okay, and activates our G protein. And then activates these other activities occurring in the cell. Okay. This is our transduction. And then the response is glycogen gets turned to glucose, and that glucose gets released into the blood. If you've ever had an adrenaline shock, something that scared you, you'll notice you feel shaky afterwards. You have a significant amount of glucose released into your blood to give you energy to either fight or flight. Okay. So benefits of a secondary messenger system here. We have a lot of amplification that's occurring. Okay. And that is helpful and excellent when we want this cascade to multiply. It means a very fast response. So maintaining homeostasis, right? We're going to talk about negative feedback for a moment. So negative feedback is really important in maintaining a balance, maintaining an internal temperature. So there's a specific body temperature. We're going to get into them in general. If something goes up past, we have our set point, right? If it goes too high, it stimulates a gland to release a hormone, which will lower that body condition back to its set, right? If the specific body condition goes lower than its set point, a gland releases a hormone, which raises the body condition. This is referred to as negative feedback, and it's really important in our exploration of the rest of biology. So our nervous system can control body temperature. Let's talk about body temperature. Our average body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. If it goes too high, the hypothalamus is a gland in your brain that will cause nerve signals to make you sweat, which will lower your body temperature back to 37. It will turn off unless it gets high again. But if your body temperature gets too low, it dilates the blood surface vessels. So if our blood pressure gets too low, the hypothalamus will send nerve signals to shiver, okay? Which is going to constrict our blood vessels, create heat for us, and get our body temperature back up. Body temperature is at set point, we stop. Maintaining homeostasis. Let's take a look at blood sugar. Your blood sugar is supposed to be 90 milligrams to 100 per 100 milliliters. If that blood sugar goes higher, your pancreas secretes insulin, okay, from the beta cells of your pancreas, right? It will cause your body to take up sugar from the blood, and that blood sugar gets lowered, okay, back to set point. And this usually happens after you guys eat, which sometimes can account for you being tired. Your blood sugar level goes too low, okay, your pancreas will secrete what's called glucagon, okay, from the alpha islet cells of the pancreas. The liver will release glucose and trigger a hunger. Okay, my bad, too fast. It triggers hunger. Okay, so glucose is released, but then it also triggers you to be hungry. But if we take a look up here, when the liver stores the glycogen, it reduces our appetite. Okay, so this is how blood sugar is controlled. Let's look at blood osmolarity. We've talked about osmosis quite a bit. So your blood osmolarity needs and blood pressure have to be at a certain point. If it goes too high, osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus will recognize this in the pituitary gland. And there's our pituitary gland, okay? ADH, antidiuretic hormone, will be released. It will increase water reabsorption. It will also increase thirst. We're talking about our nephron here. Remember, ADH acts on our collecting duct. And your blood osmolarity will go back down, okay? So if you get too low, okay, so your nephron will release what's called renin, and angiotensinogen, and then this gets released, and aldosterone gets released from your adrenal gland. It causes increased water and salt reabsorption, okay, and it gets us back to that set point. So the nervous and endocrine systems are linked. The hypothalamus is our master nerve control center, okay? It receives information from nerves around the body about internal conditions. It releases hormones, okay? Regulates the release of hormones from our pituitary gland. Now, our pituitary gland is our master gland, okay? It is our endocrine system, and we're taking a look at it right here. All right. It secretes a broad range of tropic hormones, regulating other glands in the body. Let's take a look at our pituitary gland. Thyroid stimulating hormone, which is responsible for our metabolism. Okay, and our thyroid gland. Adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay, is in our adrenal cortex. Our growth hormone released for our muscles, bone and muscle. Gonadotropic hormones, this is our follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone are responsible for the cycle of women. Okay, there's testes, there's ovaries. Prolactin, okay, mammary glands in mammals, what stimulate women to be able to produce milk to feed their young. Melanocyte stimulating hormone is melanocytes in amphibian. Oxytocin, which help contract muscles of the uterus, especially when women are in labor, okay? And antidiuretic hormone is also controlled from the posterior. So posterior pituitary here, anterior pituitary, all of these. Are you going to have to memorize them? No, but you are going to be doing some work on learning what these different hormones do and what their target cells are, okay? So the question is, we have all these hormones, and we look at what prolactin does in mammals, milk production for mammals. But in birds, it's fat metabolism. In fish, it's salt and water balance. In amphibians, it's metamorphosis and maturation, right? And then we look at the growth hormone, which is all growth and development. So there's some connections to evolution and how closely related we are across the animal kingdom, okay? So let's talk about regulating metabolism. That comes from our hypothalamus, our TRH or TSH releasing hormone, okay? The anterior triggers the anterior pituitary, and then our thyroid stimulating hormone is released. Our thyroid is inactivated, which produces thyroxine hormones, okay? And that triggers our metabolism and development, okay? We have bone growth, mental development, metabolic use of energy, meaning how we control cellular respiration, our blood pressure and our heart rate, our muscle tone, our digestion and reproduction, okay? Tyrosine and iodine are extremely important for your thyroid gland to be functioning. But here, we have the hypothalamus releases TRH, which triggers the anterior pituitary, which triggers THS. Okay, and then our thyroid will release thyroxines. And THS and thyroxines cause this to turn off because we're at set point. Okay, a goiter is something that has to do with an iodine deficiency, causes thyroid to enlarge as it tries to produce thyroxine. It's actually pretty gross. Without enough iodine, this can happen. It causes the swelling of the thyroid gland. Okay. All right, here we're looking at the endocrine system of control, the regulation of blood calcium. So here we are with our negative feedback again. We have a blood calcium level of 10 milligrams. It goes too high. The thyroid is stimulated. It releases calcitonin. causes the kidneys to reabsorb calcium and be deposited in the bones, and then our calcium levels back to normal in our blood. If it gets too low, our parathyroid gland is triggered, and it releases the parathyroid hormone. The kidney reabsorbs calcium, the bones release calcium, okay? We activate vitamin D, and then we're back. Calcium gets uptaken. So that's how the feedback system is there. Here's our female reproductive cycle, right? So not pregnant. Pregnancy, no. Our hypothalamus is triggered. We release GnRH, okay, from the pituitary gland is triggered, which releases FSH and LH, okay, which triggers the uterus, or the ovary, my apologies. The ovary releases estrogen. An egg matures and is released, and this is ovulation. It builds up the uterus lining. So women, the first 2 weeks of your cycle, your body thinks you're pregnant, so it's preparing. So we're building up the uterus lining because estrogen's been released. We have an egg, ovulation. This is the time where pregnancy can occur, okay? Progesterone maintains the uterus lining. So if there's pregnancy, no, this happens all over again, and the uterus will shed, which is why women get their period. But pregnancy, yes. Oh wait, corpus luteum breaks down progesterone. There's a drop in menstruation if we're not pregnant. However, if we have a fertilized egg or a zygote, the corpus luteum HCG causes a corpus luteum to release progesterone, which maintains the uterus lining and keeps it comfortable for the baby. Okay, and we're taking a look at different times of the month. So day 14 is ovulation for females. We're taking a look. We have a spike in LH right before, a spike in FSH, and we take a look at the uterus lining. Okay, our growing follicle, which is stimulated by follicle stimulating hormone, and then we have a spike in estrogen at ovulation. Okay, it's amazing how our bodies work. This is the tallest man in the world. He was 8'11". Could you imagine? That's crazy. All right. Effects on stress of the body. I just want to talk about this really quickly. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are short-term stress responses. There's the glycogen is broken down into glucose, and we get an increased blood glucose. We also get increased blood pressure. So we're talking about stress. This is what happens, short-term stress response, right? So if you've ever been put in some stress, you probably can recognize these. We have an increased breathing rate, increased metabolic rate. There's a change in blood flow patterns leading to increased alertness and decreased digestive and kidney activity, okay? These are all short-term responses from the adrenal medulla. It secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine. That's our body's response. So we're going to take a look at the long-term stress. So this is the effects of mineral corticoids, okay? Retention of sodium ions and water by the kidneys, increased blood volume and blood pressure, and then the effects of glucocorticoids. It's like a lot of mouth-filling words here. Proteins and fats are broken down and converted into glucose, leading to an increased blood glucose. And the immune system is suppressed. So things that are reasons why stress is bad for your body, both short-term and long-term. And I know that if you've ever put it in I know that you guys have experienced these before. Okay. All right, we're going to end it there. I'll see you in class.